Welcome. It's another edition of the Catholic View for Women, where we give you news and views from a truly Catholic perspective. I'm Teresa Tomeo, happy to be back with you, along with my co-hosts, Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Morana. And this is quite a topic we're going to discuss. And certainly people hear a lot about this in the culture, and especially with the whole very sad story of Bruce Jenner, and who has now re-identified himself as Caitlyn Jenner. A case of mistaken identity. This is another idea, actually, that Janet and I, Astrid, and I know we discussed this with you as well in planning the shows, another idea that came from that amazing conference that Janet and I both attended in the Archdiocese of Detroit that was put on by the Courage Ministry. And the last few episodes, if you're a regular viewer of EWTN's Catholic View for Women, you know we've been covering some pretty sensitive topics and some topics that may require some viewer discretion. So again, this is another little disclaimer. If you have young people in the room, especially children, that you might want to wait another time, DVR us right now or come back and watch us maybe on Friday mornings at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. A case of mistaken identity is about this push that we're seeing in the culture where people can supposedly, which is totally false and just so sad that they're misguiding people this way, that they can actually change their identity as male and female. And it's off the charts now in terms of what's happening, and we don't realize how we have been sold a bill of goods. And all of this really is a fallout of the so-called sexual revolution.
Absolutely, and one of the lies of the sexual revolution is basically that there's no difference between men and women, and it's interchangeable, it's not a big deal. So basically we're playing God, God made a mistake, and which is really absurd. And now we're seeing with studies, even Johns Hopkins University, saying that, when people undergo these surgeries to have sex change, in reality, they're actually come out worse. The suicide rate actually increases after the surgery. So it's a myth that this is helpful to people. It's a lie, and young people are being indoctrinated in the state where I live, California. It's tremendous, the pressure there is to accept these ideologies. And now we even have a bathroom bill where they are trying to push this more and more, that that they're gender neutral. If a boy thinks he's a girl, he should be allowed to go into a women's restroom. A man thinks he's a woman, he should be allowed to go into the women's restroom. And it's so dangerous, and their parents are up in arms. I mean, not only California, I know Ohio, Brian Kemper with Priests for Life, he's also, fighting that. And
he had to go to the school board meeting where the school his children go, because they were going to try to neutralize the bathrooms there. And he kind of got all the parents stirred up and went to the school board meeting and spoke out against that. Because, he said, what am I going to have to do? Pull my children out of school because I don't want them exposed to this.
Yes.
But I also think this is all a fallout of, like you said at the beginning, Teresa, the whole Bruce Jenner / Caitlyn Jenner thing.
And the whole sexual revolution.
Because, the media basically glorified Bruce Jenner when he switched over.
But he didn't even really, this is the other thing that most people don't know. He did not have a sex change operation.
No, he did not.
And he basically is just quote unquote identifying as a woman. He basically is dressing up as a woman, and he may be taking some hormones. But even if he went ahead and had the so-called reassignment surgery, it would not change his DNA. And as I wrote in a column when that story first broke, in my column for Our Sunday Visitor, I said, this poor man doesn't need accolades and awards. He needs guidance and prayers.
And see, that's the sad thing, Teresa, is that he was given so many awards, and continues to be honored.
To affirm and celebrate what he did.
He was also named one of the Women of the Year by Glamour magazine.
So he's better at being a woman than women are. It's something so absurd.
That's
but
ridiculous.
Think about the confusion. Think about the confusion, the confusing message that says to women, to men. It's just, I can't even imagine raising children right now in this culture.
It's not novel, actually. I grew up in the Hispanic community, which is socially conservative. People identify as socially conservative, family-oriented, traditional. But I grew up seeing images on TV of transvestites imitating different artists, a man imitating a woman singer. I saw people in the news that had, you couldn't really tell what gender they were. So it was something that I grew up seeing. And
so was it a form of entertainment then in the Hispanic community?
So we were toying with it. It was just something that you didn't want a child that was transgender, but you were okay seeing it on TV, kind of like entertainment.
Right,
so
entertainment.
You toy with these ideas, and then they're here in your backyard, and you realize how damaging they are, that it's not helpful to affirm these behaviors, because in fact you are destroying the person.
There's more and more movies actually coming out that where people are doing this whole identity, this case of mistaken identity, and the movies and the programs are made to endorse what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I also found it very upsetting too when everything broke about Bruce Jenner. If you looked on Facebook and people commenting, so many people. And these are people who are like my Facebook friends or Catholics and stuff, and they're all commenting like, "Oh, we're so happy for him. Oh, we're so glad he's at peace now. We're so glad he's found his true identity."
They're calling him she and
she. Yeah, they're calling him she. He's still a he, and I'm like, this is so sad that. People. If I think if we were to take a poll of people going out of church on Sunday, some people would say, "Oh, we're so glad that she's finally Caitlin's who she is, who she really is meant to be." I also go out with deep feelings for the children and his family. I mean, does he get a Mother's Day card or a Father's Day card now? I know that sounds like funny, but it's not. It's sad. I mean, this is their father, and now, he's dressed like a woman. So his mom, dad, what are you now to us?
But again, I think it's important to understand in terms of the propaganda we've been sold. A lot of people don't even realize it, and whether it's abortion, whether it's so-called same-sex marriage, whether it's the pill, birth control, all these things, how we have been just desensitized and brainwashed in terms of where this comes from. So we sat down with Deacon Patrick Lampert, who's also an MD, and he's a deacon here in the Diocese of Birmingham, and he has a big, big heart for informing people on the background of what led to this, and he's very interested in this topic because of his work as an MD. He happens to be a plastic surgeon, and he's seeing more and more plastic surgeons engaging in surgery that is unethical in terms of going along with quote unquote trying to change people from male to female or vice versa. So let's listen to see what he had to say.
It began with the divorcing of a central aspect of our human nature, with our sexual faculty, and the divorcing of the two aspects of that, and which involves a huge redefinition of the human person. And now that's continuing, and its effects on family life, and certainly, but now with transgender, it's a redefinition of the human person that completely divorces them from really their very nature, and that's a very diabolical thing. I think the people who are promoting this aren't really sure who they're working for. I sometimes wonder if they know who they're actually working for in this advocacy that they're pushing for, but it creates such tremendous uncertainty about relationships, about even who you are. How can we know who you are? That we can no longer look at someone and say that I understand who they are. In a very fundamental way, we can't even say that anymore. When you embrace transgender, you're embracing an idea of the human person as being something that's disembodied and only defined by their personal will. And that's all that's a very frightening idea. The transgender condition is really a spectrum of expressions. Transgender can be an entirely private and secret obsessive thought that intrudes into their life, that somewhere in the depth of their heart they think of themselves as the other sex, and it may be just that. It may just be kept as that in their life, that it's their secret. It may lead to a compulsive behavior that only they know about, and the associated isolation and shame that goes with that. And then it can progress to the point of creating a persona, as Bruce Jenner has done, a whole nother person with a different name, a different manner of speaking, presenting themselves to the public because it's driven by this obsessive thought that they are the other sex. So he hasn't gone the full transitioning, but still wishes to live as a woman. Well, it's really important always to be mindful of the fact that you are met with a person who has a profound interior wound. And it is the case, and I have this as my experience as a plastic and reconstructive surgeon, that there are some wounds that are never gotten over in the person's lifetime. So the very first thing that you always have to be mindful of is that you have a wounded person there, and they deserve your help and your love and your encouragement in any way that you can. How far that will meet with what the world would call success, that's an open question, but it doesn't change the fact that we are obliged by virtue of our lives, our Christian lives, to first of all reach out and help. And then perhaps we can find a way that they can get their message out, as the world will hear it. But I think that's the most important thing, is to see the individual who is transgender as someone deserving of your love and your support and your care, always remembering that they have a wound, as we all do, and that's what we do as friends. What we do as friends is we allow one another into our lives, and we help one another, support one another on our walk to eternity. The most important thing is that nobody is served by lying to them. You cannot claim to be offering charity to someone if you're not offering them truth. Now, people will be more or less prepared to hear the truth depending on where in their life they are and how far along that life they are. But it is a fact that persons who are transgender have a very high risk of self-harm and suicide. And to imagine that you are helping them by allowing them or supporting them to continue in that falsehood is a profound disservice to them. It's a disservice to their human dignity to support a lie. That's not charity at all. So we're obliged to offer the truth, but we also have to offer the truth in love. Right? Love without the truth is not love at all. Right? So we have to find charitable ways to keep people pointed in the direction of truth. And the truth is that transgendered persons who are not very strongly supported in their spiritual life in addressing the particular spiritual wound they have a 40% likelihood of suicide and other self-injury. So you're not serving them by ignoring that fact. Well, there's a wider war being waged against the moral life in the practice of medicine, and the practice of medicine is becoming more and more centralized and brought under the control of the government. And certainly the government can exercise all kinds of prerogatives about even allowing you to be licensed if you don't offer the services that the government deems people are entitled to. So entitlements with regard to transgendered persons will include psychiatric services, surgical services, even reproductive services, as we talked about in the talk, that this idea of a right to a person, a right to a child, that you're a transgendered person who's presenting as a woman and that you now have a right to a child. You can imagine that there will be a lot of pressure placed on people who do, fertility, infertility care and what have you, that those services will be offered on pain of losing your license. I fully expect that to happen. Yes, I do.
That's a look at reality, I think, what we're facing right now because of the culture.
And look what he said. I mean, just like, with the HHS mandate, as we all know, both EWTN and Priests for Life, so many groups are in a fight against the Obama administration not to provide contraceptive pills and abortion because of the mandate. Well, what he's saying there is that mandate could then extend eventually to forcing doctors that you have to provide the surgery if someone wants to change sex. Mm-hmm. So for him, who's a plastic surgeon, I remember he told us, Teresa, I would have to then give up my practice.
Yeah, he would retire.
He said I'd have to retire before I would be even getting
because
into that situation.
He says what we'd be putting, as a plastic surgeon, he said the doctors would be putting people in harm's way.
That's right. He said, because he knew, he said, I know the danger that I'm putting them in because they need to be helped. We already said 40% of the people
40%
who go through this surgery end up, committing suicide. I mean, this is a huge amount. But not only that, he knows as a deacon, as a faithful son of the church, that this is against God's will.
And the other point that there's so many good points that he made in that segment, but he talked about the wider war being waged, and I know he was referring to the medical, the world of of medicine and whatnot. But there is a wider war being waged, and it's an attack on God, as you said in the beginning, Astrid, because this goes back to exactly who we are, created in the image and likeness of God, male and female. And he said, I wonder who those people realize whom they're working for. And I thought that was a very, very important point that he made. Well, so much to talk about. We have to take a break, but we want to remind you that we're talking about a case of mistaken identity. More information that we gleaned from an amazing conference that was held in my archdiocese, the Archdiocese of Detroit. And it was put on by the AOD and, of course, the Courage Ministry. And Deacon Patrick Lappert, who's an MD, a plastic surgeon, who works right here in the Diocese of Birmingham, was one of the fantastic speakers. And he sat down to talk to us about this issue regarding a case of mistaken identity. We'll talk more about this issue when we come back. Remember, viewer discretion is advised. We do appreciate you staying tuned to the Catholic View for Women. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Catholic View for Women. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with my co-hosts, Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Morana. And before we get back to our topic of a case of mistaken identity, we do want to say thanks to those of the team that work behind the scenes with us, including our wonderful pastoral director, Father Frank Pavone. He really helps us address these very sensitive issues that we're talking about. And we also have, of course, the patroness of our program.
Well, this is
our the Madonna of the Kitchen.
Madonna of the Kitchen, and she's beautiful bronze now. She's available in bronze, and you could feel the weight of her. It's like, ooh, it's much heavier than the original one. This is beautiful, available at the EWTN Religious Catalog. And of course, as she always likes to point, she has
beautiful symbols here.
The broom here.
The broom that stands for cleanliness, but also purity as a spiritual sense as well. And then the keys here for the safety of the home, but also the keys of the kingdom of God. And then this kettle here is not only for nourishment of the body, but also nourishment of the soul.
I always feel better knowing she's here with us. I mean, she's our mother, of course, but it's just so nice to have her with us on set.
I have given it out as gifts for bridal showers, and the brides just love it. When it's part of their shower gift, and they say, oh, what a great statue to start our married life off together. And of course, I put her on my table when I have company, and it does keep everyone focused on the meal and nice conversation. You know, the Madonna's watching over them, so they always watch your P's and Q's at the table and be good, behave.
And she's watching over us, and she's watching over our viewers too,
That's right.
because Mary is our mom, right?
Amen.
And listen to your mother, as my mother always said, as in the Blessed
or
Mother.
else.
Well, we really are tackling some tough topics, but we do this because we're not afraid to discuss these issues on EWTN, and again, from a truly Catholic perspective, because you're going to hear about these issues out in the world, and you're not going to get it from a Catholic perspective, nor will you hear, of course, along with that, quotes from the Catechism, quotes from Scripture, or interviews like the one we just played for you from Dr. Lampert, who also happens to be a deacon serving in the Diocese of Birmingham, who's so concerned about the way the culture is going and the way his own profession, the medical profession, is going in terms of eventually, as he said, they may be forced out of practice if they don't agree to do this type of surgery, the so-called reassignment surgery, maybe even some sort of plastic surgery that's augmenting or changing a person's attributes that would normally be associated with being male or female.
And I'm sure it's creating problems for him among his colleagues, because people may not realize, but everyone in a certain specialty in medicine, they go to conferences and things, and now he's got colleagues at these conferences who are talking about these surgeries they're doing, and he's sitting there saying,
you think about it, and when we were at his session where he was going through the history of all the propaganda with people like Kinsey and others who were pushing this agenda, and some of the problems that occurred with some of the experiments that were made on some children.
He talked about a set of identical twins.
Horrible story.
Horrible
and I sat there during that session and I said, dear Lord, what have we come to in this world? And all of this is being pushed as normal, whatever you want to do. And then not only is it being pushed as normal, but people are being forced to do things against their own judgment, against their own faith. And eventually, as he said, he could be forced out of business for not performing this type of surgery.
But how many people actually know this is happening? I mean, how many
because it's not discussed, not many.
Discussed. So a question that I had when I'm listening to Dr. Lampert is like, the information he's giving is so compelling. I mean, the danger people are being put through who undergo transgender, this transgender process or this surgery, the danger, 40% suicide rate. And yet, we're not really learning about it. I think the natural question is, who is going to share this? And I think it's our viewers that learn this information. We have to evangelize. We've got so many platforms now, social media, when these articles come out, and there's such wonderful Catholic news sources like the National Catholic Register is wonderful. These news come out, they print the articles. Please share the truth, because the reason why all this stuff is being accepted is because there's not a lot of pushback. We keep electing
people are afraid to speak up because
Right.
they're worried because there's so many measures that are taken against people. They're called in addition to the name calling and the insults, there's also legal threats and
conservative
discrimination.
professors are being ousted because of that.
But, the sad thing too is many parents, I think, are kind of caving into this idea that if their teenager comes to them and says, I'm a girl and I want to be a boy, well, they kind of go along with it.
Well, the same thing, for example, as we talked about in our previous episodes about the parents of women and men who have same-sex attraction, thinking they automatically have to accept it because it's their son or daughter. But I think the bottom line is that being a Christian especially in today's society, is, well, it's never a cakewalk, right? The Lord doesn't say, pick up your bottle of champagne and, and follow me to the beach. He says, take up your cross and follow me. So it's never easy. But the rain falls on the just and the unjust in this world. There's always going to be challenges. But what he does promise us is there is a way that I will walk with you through these different trials.
Teresa, I remember you and I at that dinner meeting that time, event, and one of the ladies who was organizing, it was just telling us that, I guess she was sharing her heart because she was so upset that her niece/nephew, she's her niece, and she said, my brother and sister-in-law have agreed that she just recently had a radical mastectomy. She's changing from being a girl to a boy. And I remember saying to her, and how old is this person? And they said, oh, she's 16. So then they're changing her name legally and doing all this as to a boy's name. And I said, and who's paying for that? She said, oh, their medical insurance, they're using them. I said, and then but their insurance wasn't covering, they were going to just pay out of pocket. And I said, but why? Why are they allowing her? First of all, a radical mastectomy is a dangerous procedure. God forbid someone had breast cancer. But here, this is a young kid who's doing this because she thinks she needs to be a boy. And I said, shouldn't she be going for counseling? Go see a psychologist? And her response was, they're so afraid she might commit suicide. And I was like, but don't you realize after she does the surgery, she's going to be at a greater risk to commit suicide?
The opposite is true.
I mean, I couldn't get over, Teresa, that we had to, that
Yes.
people, here are people that are Catholics, go to church, and yet they're caving into what they think. Well, this is the path I guess we have to take.
Well,
It's
but they
scary.
haven't heard, as Astrid said, if
Right.
they're not hearing it,
Right.
and
They don't
this
know.
is normally something that you're not going to talk about in the 10-minute homily because it's
No.
impossible
Lay
to
people, though,
cover
can
lay
share.
people. That's why we do what we do here at EWTN. And people
right.
don't know that this information is available, and we have got to get the word out. And we are really swimming upstream
Yeah.
against the culture. Okay, we only have a few minutes left, so we really want to get over our homework, get to our homework, I should say.
Okay. Well, the first, I just want to say that there's the prayer for healing to Saint Raphael, who's one of the archangels, the angel of healing, and we'll have this on our website.
That's a beautiful prayer.
Beautiful
Yeah.
prayer. And actually, it's not just good for this one thing, because
Right.
in the prayer, it says, I especially ask for mercy in this present need, and you just name your intention. And it says, may my prayer comes before your glorious presence and find favor, and I ask this through Jesus Christ, etc. I mean, this is for any kind of thing you're struggling
Right.
with. So it's not just for same-sex attraction or a transgender inkling or anything. It could be struggling with alcohol abuse or gambling or
Right.
any sin. This is a great prayer of healing to Saint Raphael. And of course, we've been mentioning on this series, Living the Truth in Love, available at the EWTN Religious Catalog. Great pastoral approaches for people suffering with same-sex attraction. A lot of great essays in here, and it was edited by Janet Smith and Father Paul.
And Janet
Paul
Smith,
Check.
yeah, and
Of
Father Paul
Courage.
Check is phenomenal. He's a chaplain for Courage, and he is just such a powerful witness. And
right.
really, I love what he says about the fact that all the problems that many of the problems that we're having as a result of the sexual revolution have to do with the case of exactly what the title of this program is, a mistaken identity, because we don't know who we are, made in the image and likeness of God, and we don't know the Lord. If we knew him and we knew how we were designed so beautifully, everything would fall into place.
That's right.
But we have to have that will to submit, and that's the bottom line. And again, that is a great book. It's got great resources in there, and all of the essays that were given at that conference are in that book. And we are talking about these sensitive topics because we want you to be armed with the information. We want you to be able to help maybe someone in your own family or maybe someone in your community. And in addition to that particular book and the prayer that we mentioned, we should also remind folks that and we should put this on our website. I just thought of it, just popped into my head. It must have been the Holy Spirit. Dr. Jennifer Roback Morris's website, the Ruth Institute, because she is addressing all of these different issues
Yes.
in terms of the sexual revolution, because her whole mindset is that we're in this mess because of the sexual revolution.
That's
and
right.
the victims, and she has a whole segment on her website, the victims of the sexual revolution.
Healing the victims of
Right.
the sexual
And
revolution.
look at
yes.
what he said in terms of the high suicide rate, the profound interior wound, that people have with this disorder. So again, it's just incredible to make sure that we have these really good resources. And so just pay attention to our website, which is CatholicViewForWomen.com. We're very passionate about these topics because we want you to have the information. So CatholicViewForWomen.com. And again, read Living the Truth in Love by Dr. Janet Smith and Father Paul Check, which is available through Ignatius Press. And also to pray this beautiful healing prayer of Saint Raphael, the angel of healing. Well, wow. I wish we had more time. We only have about 60 seconds left. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, know that just to be informed and continue to go to our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com,
Yes.
sign up for our e-letter, which we send every month. And if you have, things to tell us about what you would like topics to cover for next season.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
this series is going to air, but then we'll be in the midst of already taping and planning the next one. So we kind of need to hear from our viewers what other
Yeah.
topics they want us to cover.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for watching. Again, you have been watching The Catholic View for Women. TheCatholicViewForWomen.com is our website, and we'll see you next time on The Catholic View. Stay tuned.